This content is brought to you in part by Real Marketing, the only marketing firm recommended exclusively by the Institute. Real Marketing utilizes over 25 years of expertise, and their products are built and customized for you to dominate any neighborhood, anywhere. Go to realmarketing4u.com. That's realmarketing, the number 4, u.com. So welcome, Michael. I'm sure our listeners are wondering, gosh, what does the 12-week year have to do with luxury real estate?
That's a good question. And I think, the 12-week year is one of those things that I like to joke isn't about anything, but you can apply it to just about anything. So it's a system to help you execute against your best goals in a way that helps you accomplish them faster and also with greater results. So when we look at the 12-week year, it's been applied in medical manufacturers like Medtronic. It's been applied in financial services firms like MassMutual, and also in a number of realtors operations as well.
That's great. And, I think about the luxury real estate space and serving high net worth individuals as really an execution job. Like you really have to be at the top of your game. And we teach that at the Institute. And one of the ways in which you do that is your time is your most valuable resource. And so you and I have had some lengthy conversations, and we did an actual webinar for our very lucky members of the Institute. And you and your partner, Brian Moran, gave a great overview of what really is the 12-week year. And I wanted to do a podcast with you because I wanted to take a deeper dive, right? Wanted to pick out some things about, first, the book. And the book it's called The 12-Week Year. I'm holding it up. And for those who aren't on video, you can see it's The 12-Week Year. It is available on Amazon.com. It's been a bestseller for many years. And so we have first kind of the concepts in the book, but then I'm always the curious mind. I want to know where these things started. And so one of the things we talked about, that Brian talked about on the webinar, was periodization, right? And what periodization has to do with business planning and where that came from. Can you kind of give us the origin story, if you will?
Sure. So if you've heard of periodization before, or if you haven't, it's a discipline to help athletes to train for their events. And so, as you probably are aware, most athletes have game days and then they have practice days. And so what you want to do is you want to peak when you're at your game day performance. And so we first became aware of periodization. One of our clients, who was a bicycle racer, introduced us to the concept. And what it really is the concept that helps you to focus in on the core skills of your sport and train on those areas. So instead of just training broadly across all the disciplines of your sport, you'll focus in on one aspect of it. So if you're a bike racer, you might focus on sprints. You might then focus on hill climb, and then you might focus on long distance rides. But you're going to focus on just that one skill for a period of maybe 4 or 5 weeks, overload on that, raise your capacity, then move to the next. And it's all timed to deliver at the event. So, you get ready for a race by training very focused, short periods of time on a single skill of your sport. And we first encountered that, we realized, this has a lot of power in it, this power of focus, really focusing on the key aspects of your sport or your business for a short period of time and then moving to the next. But the problem is, in business, you can't take time off for 6 weeks and train and then go deliver. You've got to train and deliver simultaneously. You've got to get better while you're in the work. So we adapted the concept of periodization to fit a business. And we really wanted to keep that short cycle focus. And that's where the 12 weeks came from. And there's other reasons why that 12 weeks is a good time frame, but that's how periodization sort of got us thinking about a shorter cycle.
Well, I think one of the more obvious questions to people like me who grew up in public companies, right? That's where I learned how to manage and plan. What's different about this idea of a 12-week year versus just simply quarterly planning?
That's a great question. In fact, a lot of times, one of our clients came up to us after a session we did and said, "Congratulations, you rebranded the calendar and sold it back to us." And I thought that was
oh, that's great. Branded the calendar. It's funny.
But it's not quite the same, because the way that we behave is an outcome of our thinking. And one of the biggest barriers, or one of the biggest drivers of our success, is the way that we think about time. And so when we talk about quarterly planning, one of the challenges with that is that it's a quarter of what, right? It's a quarter of a 12-month year. And annualized thinking, which quarterly planning is part of, is a really unproductive way of thinking about time, because it creates the illusion that there's a lot of time to get things done. And so if you've been in corporate, I've been in corporate too. And one of the things that I remember talking, to my partners with is that, hey, we missed the numbers this quarter. We're not happy, but guess what? We can make it up next quarter, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that kind of thinking that, hey, I can make it up, creates a lack of urgency. And when things get rough, we can kind of back off a little bit and say, well, we can make it up. So that's unproductive. And it causes a lot of companies to have peaks in activity at the end of their fiscal year, whereas earlier in the year, they don't necessarily operate with the same intensity.
Right. It's sort of like a beginning of the year, end of year, or in the old days, you probably remember the Monday, Friday car, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to buy a car that was built on a Monday or a Friday, right? It's this thinking that, people hit the ground running in January, they join the gym, they do all these things, and then it peters out over the year, right? And so this mindset shift is really what the 12-week year is about. It's not quarterly planning.
Right, exactly, because you don't succeed or fail every annual cycle. You don't succeed or fail every quarter. You don't succeed or fail every 12 weeks. Really, you succeed or fail every day. Every moment, you either do the stuff you need to do or you don't. And one of the things that gets in the way of that is the way you're thinking about time. Because if I think I have a lot of it, I'm not going to act with urgency. When I realize that I don't have a lot of it, that it's inelastic, I don't get any more than anybody else. It passes whether I use it well or not. I can't save it really. So because time is such a valuable resource, as you pointed out, the way we think about it is critical to success, in my view.
It's interesting, and I know that you've done you and your team of consultants and whatnot over the years have done quite a bit of work in the financial services field. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I was attracted to is, in the real estate profession, it can kind of tend to get a little myopic, right? But the world that appears in my mind to be the closest to it, especially in the luxury market, is serving high net worth individuals through like investment advisors. Mm-hmm. And I know that you've worked with quite a number of them. And so how would you determine how the plan and the planning process is similar in financial services and these people who serve high net worth individuals and the people who serve those same high net worth individuals in the transaction of a real estate sale or purchase?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. And of course, the services are different, but expectations of the client are probably equally high. So you have high value clients that are sort of your A or AA clients, and you want to make sure that you're serving them well with the process. And so with the 12-week year, with any approach to planning, the ideas are the same, but with a 12-week year, you get more of that stuff done. But with financial services, when they're focused on high net worth clients, one of the things that you want to really do is get your process locked in and down so that there's a consistent experience for your clients. And with the 12-week year, one of the things that we do is we assess what you want to create in your business. We work with high net worth financial advisors. We work with them to help them understand exactly what kind of a business do you want to run. And that includes the kind of client you want to work with, the value you want to create for those clients, the kind of income, obviously, that you want to create, the amount of time that you want to spend doing that, how your team needs to be focused and structured so that you can be fierce and original in your work, but then your team is following up and doing all the stuff that has to be done to really deliver a quality product. So when we work with financial advisors, it's very often when they're working with high net clients, it's not just them, it's their team, it's the whole process, the whole client experience. And so when we do that, it's a process of, and I don't want to get too so anecdotally.
No, we keep going. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's a process of really assessing the gap between where you say you want to be along all those areas and where you are today. And in 12 weeks, you're not going to close all the gaps. You're not going to be the premier provider of the services you want to provide in 12 weeks if you're not already doing that. But what we do with the 12 weeks is we want you to kind of a dual path. The first path is the path of driving your business the way it runs today, the way it's set up today with your current client base, the way it is today, with the team you have today, with your current skill set and your current licenses and all that. And we help you to optimize that business. So you're earning money as you go forward. But at the same time, we also have a capacity growth aspect to your plan. And that's where you're really moving your practice to deliver for those ideal clients of yours that you want to create an exceptional experience for. And so you can build from where you are by setting up 12-week goals that represent what you want to earn today, and also the specific skills you want to develop in the next 12 weeks. And then you just keep doing that until you finally accomplish what you want to accomplish in your service delivery. So I know that's a lot of talk, but it's an interesting process, because when we create these 12-week cycles, you get this immediacy to your business, right? So you might say in 20 years from now, or 15 years from now, or 10 years from now, I want to look like this. My business needs to look like this, but that's so far off. It's not motivating. It's frustrating. It's confusing. But when we can bring that long term to the near term and create real clarity about the progress you need to make right now, it creates this energy and the sense of success almost instantly, which is one of the things that I think really gives a 12-week year its power. It's this immediacy of action and result.
That's really good. And you're talking about vision, right? And that's really the first and one of the 5 disciplines within the book and the system, right?
Right.
And so if we could take a minute and talk about that, I sort of think that visioning exercises are sometimes challenging for people, right? They're like writing your own bio or your own resume. Yeah. How would you talk about, in a kind of a simple way, this idea of vision as it relates to the 12-week year?
That's a great question. And I think with vision, it's one of those things that most people know about vision, right? There's not, if I come out and say, hey, we're going to help you build out a vision, it's not the first time you've heard that or the first time you've tried it. Right. But there's a reason everybody knows about vision, and everybody's, thinking about building a vision for themselves, or most people are. It's because it's powerful in terms of getting results. And so that's why we put it into the 12-week year. It's a powerful aspect of driving results. And so with vision, though, we're all wired differently. We don't all gravitate to the same desires. We don't all have the same aspirations for our lives. And
right.
we don't try to put people in a box and say, okay, here's, you've got to have a driver for revenue. You've got to have a driver for, impact in the community or whatever. But we want people to really think about, what does a life well lived look like for them? And so we've got some tools that we use to help them think about that. But we start with where people really are. And one of the things I'd advise people to do is not to feel like they have to have some kind of aspirational vision that it's impressive, that shows that they're altruistic and they're just really wonderful people. That's not the purpose of a vision, is to show up to somebody else. The thing for a vision is that you want to have something that motivates you, something that you can have an emotional connection to, that causes you to want to spend the price of your own personal comfort. Because the biggest barrier to effective execution is personal comfort. I'd rather be comfortable than uncomfortable. Most people, that's a natural way we all are. But the problem is that comfort is immediate. I can be comfortable by not working, right? And the stuff I've got to do to get to my vision is typically uncomfortable. I might really love the vision, but the work that I've got to do between here and there is probably some of it I'm not going to love. So the reason that we want to have a vision is not because, we feel like you have to have some sort of a purpose in life. It's great if you do, but it's because we know that what gets in the way for people trying to accomplish more is that they have to pay the price of their own comfort. And if you're not clear and you don't have an ownership stake in some future that's bigger than where you are today, you're going to struggle to get some of the things done in your business that you think you want to get done. Because
should your vision make you uncomfortable? Is that kind of what you're drilling to? Yeah. Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah. The thing is, if your vision doesn't make you uncomfortable, you're probably not stretching enough. There's a part of your brain that fires up when you think about the distant future. It's in your prefrontal cortex. And it's the same part of your brain that fires up when you look at a mountain range. We get that kind of aspirational, kind of inspirational feeling from that. So the brain is going to move you towards that vision, but there's also a part of your brain very deep in the amygdala that causes you to kind of react negatively to a big future. So if you dream about something that makes you uncomfortable, then you realize that it's big enough to kind of scare you a little bit. And that the amygdala reacts to things you don't know how to do. It probably kept you out of trouble in college, right? It kept you from.
That's the fight, flight, freeze.
Right.
Is that the fight? Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's healthy. I wouldn't say that you want to take all the risks that are in front of you, but at the same time, creating a big life causes you to have to step out into areas you're not comfortable in. So a good vision, if it's big enough, it's stretchy enough, is going to make you feel uncomfortable.
And so if you think about the vision making you uncomfortable, and then we move to the second discipline, which is this planning or the plan, how does that differ, right?
So when we have a long-term vision, it's really a pipe dream unless we start acting on it, right? I mean, you've got to act on the vision, otherwise it's not going to ever happen. So the way that we do that is we bring that vision into the present. And so this long-term vision, aspirational vision that you build, maybe 15, 20 or more years into the future. And so we got to back that into closer to today. And we do that by creating a 3-year vision that's more specific and measurable. It's probably got some numbers in it, got some specific things you're going to deliver. Aspirational vision is a much more motivational, may not be that specific, could be a little bit, but the 3-year vision is going to be more time bound. So it's going to be more specific. And then you take that 3-year vision and you just back it into today. So where do I have to be 2 years from now, 1 year from now? Where do I have to be at the end of this year and be on track with that vision, right? And then every 12 weeks, when I set my 12-week goal, is what do I have to do this 12 weeks to be on track with that 12-month vision, if you will. And so the 12-week plan starts with that 12-week goal. And it does two things. One, it's the growth towards the future. And the other thing is it's a business well run. It optimizes your current business, right? So you optimize your current results while you're building for the future. And that's what the 12-week year goal does. It'll have an aspect of it that's about capacity growth and an aspect that's about producing revenue.
And you start the cycle all over again at the end of the 12 weeks and you do right, but it all ties back to the vision. And this
all ties back to the vision.
Yeah. And the 3-year, right, the backing into the plan. So when you define like the third one, which is process control, how do we incorporate that into our day-to-day, right? And when I say I mean, right, our this is really for real estate professionals and people in the business that have this immediacy about things. Everybody's very busy. So can you talk a bit about process control?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great point, Diane. One of the things we've noticed is that when people come to a training, if they don't have some kind of a process to help them implement the ideas that we've given them, they're going to struggle. In fact, research shows that about 50% of the time with a good vision and a good plan, you're about 50% likely to fail. So it's like a coin flip. And so what we want to do is increase the odds. And we do that through the tools that are in process control. And, our environment pushes back against us changing because it's got all these triggers in it that cause us to kind of run our habit cycles like we run them. The people we work with expect us not to change. And so there's this reinforcement in groups that kind of inhibits change. And we're really, really good at what we currently do. So we've got this learning curve problem of new ideas and new actions that are going to cause us to feel uncomfortable, right? So there's all these things that push back against change. So with process control, what we want to do is really increase the odds past that of a coin flip. And so there's two tools that I think really stand out. There's a number of them, but two tools I recommend when you're really looking to make a change. One is to work from a written plan. And that's one of the aspects of process control. The other is to, at the end of the week, once you've executed for the week, you get together with a peer or two or three and you confront what worked and what didn't work, and then talk to the peers about what you're going to do differently next week or continue to do based upon what just happened.
That's great. And so like in the world of real estate, that's like your team leader or a teammate, right? And really trying to get the language down and make sure people really understand what we're trying to do. And so in sales of any kind, right, you know that the scorecard is kind of worn on your back. Mm-hmm. And yet you're talking about a different kind of scorecard, right? You're talking about not just, hey, I got the commission, right, or hey, I made the sale. So the fourth discipline being keeping score. How does that differ in the 12-week plan than just this idea of the binary world of I made the sale or I didn't?
Right. Yeah, kind of that on-off switch. You're elated or you're depressed, right? So,
right.
The thing about measurement is that most people don't like it for two reasons. One is because it's sometimes cumbersome to measure. And the other reason, which is probably the stronger reason, is that I don't want to confront the fact that I didn't do what I said I was going to do. Yeah. And so it's an uncomfortable process. But without it, you're flying blind, especially in 12 weeks. You just don't have a lot of time to mess around, right? If you're going to hit your goals in 12 weeks, you've got to be focused. It's not that you're working any harder. You're just working on better stuff. So you got to pay attention. And so what we want to do is measure two things with the 12-week year. And one of them is what we call lead indicators. The second thing is what we call lag indicators. They are what they sound like. Lead indicators happen early, lag indicators happen late. The reason you want to have an early indicator, something that happens right away. And what I mean by that, so let's say that I'm going to be losing weight. Let's say I want to lose, 10 pounds this 12 weeks. A lead indicator for me might be the number of hours I'm in the gym. It might be the number of calories I'm eating per day, but I'm going to track a number that I know every day. Did I spend the time? Did I eat the calories I was supposed to eat? That I'll know that day one. And I can predict whether I'm going to lose the weight day one, right? And then I'll also track lag, which is going to be the weight loss. That comes off, maybe starts coming off in week 2 or 3 or 4, and I'll start to see that drop off. And so I'm tracking my lead and my lags, and I'll know every week where I'm at. So that's an obvious thing. Most people know those things. Most people don't track them though. But one of the things that we track in the 12-week year that most people don't track, and this is, I think, the real difference maker for a lot of our clients, is that we're also tracking your execution effort.
Okay.
We're going to pay attention to what percentage of the tactics that we're doing your plan actually got done. And what we found out after working with tens of thousands of people is that if you score about 80% of the tactics that are due getting done each week, you're typically going to hit your goal. Now, there's a lot of variables, how well your plan's written, and are you cherry picking the tactics? But if you're really just actually executing about 80% of your tactics, you're going to hit your goal typically. And that's a really profound aspect of the 12-week year, I think, because you don't have to be perfect. You're not going to be perfect. It's not possible,
right.
But you're going to be excellent. You're going to be good. So that's what we do. We track your execution and your results. And every week, this is for the numbers jocks in the room, but every week you're going to be able to see how well you're executing, and is your executing moving the numbers. And
right.
And if you're executing and you're moving the numbers, what do? You keep going, right? It's like it's working. If you're not executing and you're not moving the numbers, then confront your lack of execution, because execution is what drives the numbers. So if you're not executing, you got to confront that. And then if you are executing, but you're not moving the numbers, then you got to go confront the plan, because the plan, while it's being executed, isn't moving the numbers. So you've got to adjust the plan. Every week, if you're measuring those two things, execution and progress in your lead and lags, you're going to know exactly what to do to get on track or to keep going. So,
when I talk to you, I immediately go into the definition of conscious competence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I cannot tell you how many times people say, gosh, I don't know how Jane did that. Well, Jane can tell you. And the more conscious you are, and this plan and this 12-week year really is about raising consciousness, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is. But not about everything, just about a few things that are really important.
Right. What's the most important thing, and make sure that you're doing them. So like the things that spoke to me when I, have gone through planning that has really made an impact, it's this idea of tracking the right things. Mm-hmm. It's easy to track the lagging, which is I sold the house or I didn't. I made the sale or I didn't. Mm-hmm. But the point that you made, which is it's fairly profound, and I'm going to repeat it, is that comes because of something, right? Which is the execution. Right. And a lot of people don't look back at their plan again. They write it down. They assume they did it right. And then they don't know why they're not getting the same results. So in the world of the tens of thousands of people that you have trained and talked to about this system, how often do people change their plans?
That is a really good question. Mm-hmm. And it's a good question because there's two reasons people typically change their plans, two most common. Right. One is because the plan's not working and they're working the plan. The other is because they don't feel like working the plan. And so they want to do a different plan. They're way behind.
Right.
Feel better, right? The latter reason is a terrible reason to change your plan. It's better to stick with that productive tension of having a plan that you're not executing and confront the fact that you're not taking action, because that awareness, as you talked about, raising awareness, that's one of the key things you want to become aware of, is that you're just not doing what you say you want to do. On the other hand, though, if you're thinking about, the plan that has to change because you're running the plan and it's not adapting to the environment well, that's a great idea to change the plan, because you don't just want to work a plan if it's not delivering what you expect. So you've got to be able to be on top of every week. Is it working? Is it not? Is it me that's not working, or is it the plan that's not working? And if it's the plan that's not working, that's when you change the plan. The other thing that happens too is that in an annual cycle, and I want to kind of come back to the power of the 12-week year one more time if I can. Yeah. Here. And in the annual cycle, there is so much time to get things done that you don't necessarily feel the urgency of a plan that's not working. With the 12-week year, because you've shifted your thinking from success and failure being a 12-month deal to now success and failure is a 12-week deal. People are all in a 12-week year the last quarter of the year, because there's no more time to get stuff done. There's no more, if I don't get it done now, it's not going to happen. So everybody, that's why we see this peak in activity, where people are doing more stuff and they're getting more results. So everybody's periodized or 12-week year size, if you will, at the end of the year. But the reason they do that is because their success and failure hangs in the balance. So what we want to do is move their thinking to look at the 12 weeks as their success and failure cycle. So every 12 weeks, I'm either successful or I'm not by my own definition. And that creates a greater sense of urgency and focus. So when I'm executing in a 12-week cycle, then, and I own that goal as my success and failure measure, then if I'm falling off in week 1, I'm going to get back on. If I'm thinking annually, if I'm falling off in the first week of January, I'm not going to be worried. I've got 51 more weeks. I'm not worried at all. I'm going to make it up, right? And that's the kind of low productivity thinking that creates the problem. So when you think about changing the plan, the problem with the 12-month cycle is that you have no idea what's going to be happening in November when you're sitting there in January. Nope. I mean, look at what happened in 2020. And I don't want to reiterate it when we could all just kind of spit it all out, but there's been just a huge amount of change in society in the last 12 months that you couldn't have predicted. And if you planned, I guarantee your plan was terrible after May. It didn't fit unless you happen to be, in pharmaceutical manufacturing and you plan to have a pandemic, but
huge, right.
Mostly for most of us, it didn't. And so it's too long a cycle to adjust. But with most plan, by the way, most annual plans are invalid after March. So where the 12-week year is really, really superseded is that when things are not working, you can change it. And here's the thing, there are things you don't know from the beginning, right? In 12 weeks, even so let's say I'm doing a marketing launch, right? And I'm gonna make this offer, and I might have a split test. One offer is going to work, one offer is not going to work. Maybe I'm thinking both offers don't work. Well, then what do? Well, I've got to come up with a new offer. So, but maybe one of them just took off. And so now I'm just doing split tests on that offer. My point is that you only know a certain amount of information that you can plan for. And you've got to be able to adjust your plan based upon what the world's telling you. So you change your plan when it's no longer functioning.
Michael, one of the things that we get told, and we ask the question, right? What are the biggest inhibitors to your success? And by a long shot, people say the ever-encompassing time management, okay? Mm-hmm. And so we've talked about your 4 principles your 4 disciplines. And the fifth one is what you call the time use, or take back control of your day, yes. Okay? And I say that lead in because I think that it's an important distinction to make, that time management isn't the problem, right? Right. It's all of the things we just have spent time talking about leading up to this idea of taking back your day. So how does the 12-week year help you do that?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I don't think you can manage time.
It's going to happen. It's like one of my least favorite phrases ever, right?
Yeah. So because you can't manage it, but you can allocate it. You can choose how you spend it. Mm-hmm. And so that's really what we try to do with our time use discipline. It's how people block time in a way that lets them make sure that the strategic stuff gets done, make sure all the administrivia still gets done, because even though it may not necessarily drive revenue, a lot of that's got to happen. Mm-hmm. And then also you've carved out time to refresh and re-engage and re-energize. So we really have 3 time blocks that we recommend that people use. And what we find with those time blocks is that when people do that, when we see people actually apply those time blocks, everything else kind of follows, because everything we do gets done in the context of time. Yeah. If we don't spend time on it, it doesn't happen. And if all of us had enough time to get everything done, it wouldn't matter how we spend our time. I mean, I'd be on the beach right now. But the reality is that we don't have enough time to get everything done, which means that we have to prioritize. And that's where we tie all the way back, to 20 minutes ago, to that vision that we were talking about, because the vision is telling us what our priorities are. And if our time use isn't aligned with those priorities, we're spending our time in the wrong way. So we want to create time blocks that allow us to spend time on what we think our top priorities are. We may not get the other stuff done.
Right.
It may not happen. But if we're getting the big stuff done, it doesn't matter.
And I think that's such an interesting aha, right? Like, because one of the things that we see people do is they work around the clock, and there's no real distinction between should I be doing this or shouldn't I? It just simply is on my plate. And so that's where the tying back and continuously tying back to the vision and the plan and the ability and the freedom to be able to say no, right? Which is sometimes hard, right? But so that was an excellent journey through these 5 disciplines, and they dovetail to what you all call the principles, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so this is really, I think, where the rubber meets the road, right? The ability for you to get this done or not is how much do you wrap your mind around these principles? So the first one, right, accountability, which has a different definition than a lot of people, right? They talk about accountability partners and things like that. How do you define accountability?
Well, in fact, Brian and I are writing a book right now on that very topic to talk about.
Excellent. Can't wait to buy it.
Well, thank you. One of the things that we look at around accountability is that there's 2 perspectives on accountability in the marketplace right now. The individual who knows that they want to have more accountability, they have a realization that if I'm more accountable, I'm going to be more successful. And when we sell accountability products, and I'm sure it works for most marketers, is that there's a huge demand for accountability.
Yeah.
And people are seeking it, which is an interesting idea. So the individuals who apply accountability to themselves have this view about accountability as an ability to do the things that they say they want to do. It's in a sense, it's like an integrity aspect of integrity, right? So I do what I say, and I do what I want to do, and yet most of us don't do what we think we want to do. We do other things. So that's one view of accountability at the individual level. But here's the thing with leaders: is leaders look at accountability completely differently than that. They might look at it for themselves personally that way, but the other way that they look at accountability as a leader is I want to hold you accountable. I want to hold somebody else accountable. And we don't believe that that's possible. There's a huge multi-million, maybe multi-billion-dollar businesses are out there in terms of helping people to hold other people accountable. There's accountability systems, right? That really they're just measurement systems. And you set standards for people, and if they miss the standards, they get hammered, right? Or if they beat the standard, they get a bonus or something. So what you really got is you got a consequence management system, and that's the problem I think with a lot of people in accountability is they look at accountability as consequence management, and it's not. In our view of accountability is that it's ownership. My ownership of my responsibility is to do the things I say I'm going to do or not to do those things. And as that's a personal choice of mine to be either accountable or not. And so as a leader, I can't actually hold you to do that. I can only hold myself accountable. What I can do though, is I can challenge you with your personal accountability. I can challenge you to take greater ownership. I can challenge you to deliver on what you're capable of and then help you do that. But the consequences of either doing your job or not doing your job are the natural consequences that come from the world. The world will either reward you or punish you. That's not the boss's job, right?
Right.
So
that's great.
When we talk about accountability, therefore, we think it's the foundational principle to high performance. That if you are personally accountable, you are likely to be personally successful. I don't think I've ever met anybody who was successful long-term, and I'm not talking about lottery winners. I'm talking about year after year, decade after decade successful, are people that are accountable. And that's why we put into the 12-week years, because accountability is really that powerful driver of our success. And it boils down to one thing. Am I willing to take ownership of what my goals are? Am I willing to take ownership of the work between me and the goal? And then am I willing to do that stuff and confront the breakdowns? So if I got to pay attention, and if I've taken accountability, I've taken ownership. The thing about accountability is that people feel like they have to do stuff. I have to go to work. I have to do this. I have to do that. You don't have to do anything. And the reality is, though, if you choose to do something, you choose not to do something, there's going to be consequences, right? So Brian talks about, I don't want to pay my taxes, right? But I don't have to. Right. If I don't pay my taxes, I'm going to probably get a letter from the IRS, probably, oh, by the way, did you forget to send in your check? Don't worry, just send it right away. If I ignore that, then pretty soon they start to get a little bit more threatening. We know you've got some bank accounts, we're going to freeze them. And if I take the money out and I still don't pay them, eventually I'm going to end up in jail, right?
Right.
So the choice I'm making is, do I want to pay my taxes or do I want to go to jail? I might not like either choice, but I choose to pay my taxes because I don't want to go to jail. Here's the key to that, is that if I think I have to pay taxes, it's much more onerous. If I realize I'm choosing to pay taxes as part of my larger vision for myself, it's a lot less onerous. So that realization that accountability is about what I choose to do, not that I have to do anything, but I choose to do the things that help me accomplish my goals. And that's a huge psychological relief for me, because when you have choice, you have control.
Why do you think people, and this is my own personal curiosity, like when you say that people don't want to confront, you call it confronting the breakdown. Mm-hmm. That's, what do you think happens to people in that moment? They don't want to measure it because they don't want to see it. They don't want to confront it.
That's a really, really good question, Diane. And I'm sure you have, the way you're asking the question, I think you have a lot of answers to that yourself.
No, I don't. I mean, I'm people are fascinating to me. And I really like how, it's just very clear that the system has been in place for a long time. There's a lot of people that do what the system does, and they're successful at it. They're doubling, tripling, and quadrupling their business because they've chosen something that might be uncomfortable, right? And the other thing that I think about is this idea of commitment versus interests, mm-hmm. right? Because commitment's a really big part of this, isn't it?
It is. It's a huge part. And so really accountability and commitment are so closely related because they're actually two sides, I think, of the same coin, psychological coin. But you're right. The people don't want to confront that gap between what they said they were going to do and what they actually did, because it's uncomfortable. It reads to them as a story about how they lack integrity, they lack professionalism, they lack competency, they lack the drive, or they lack something, right? The reality is, it's just information. If you look at the dashboard of your car and you notice you're low on gas, I mean, that's not an existential crisis. You don't beat yourself up. What a bad person I am for not putting gas in the car. What do? You drive to the gas station, put gas in the car, right? That's all these numbers are telling you. So you're low on gas over here. You need to put some gas in this car over here. Otherwise, you're going to run out of gas.
The consequence, yeah.
But people read into this emotional baggage into the numbers. And it does relate to this concept of accountability, because we don't commit to everything. And when we think about a commitment is something that we confuse with our interests all the time. I could be interested in a lot of things. And when the going gets tough or when it gets difficult to pursue those interests, I can let them go and I don't beat myself up. Where I get in trouble is when I'm interested in something, but I think I'm committed to it. Right. So, there's a lot of things that people get involved with like that. They're interested in somebody, so they marry them in a commitment. And then it turns out, well, I was just kind of, right. Because you didn't know the costs. There's a price you pay for accomplishing a goal. And a commitment means you're committing not just to the outcome, but to the price you pay on the way. And people don't pay attention to the price too often.
I like that. I like that a lot. You should probably put that on a t-shirt, because that's really good. All right. Well, kind of coming back to, your 5 disciplines and the 3 principles that go with that. The last one, I think, is, at least I think it's probably going to be the most interesting to hear you talk about, which is greatness in the moment.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea because it really wraps up everything in the 12-week year. I mean, if you look at all the things that we put in the 12-week year, it's all pointed at the moment. It's all pointed at what you do next. And either taking action or not taking action in the moment creates the future. Brian likes to talk about in his speeches that he can predict your future. He can tell you where you're going to be a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now. And the way he does it is he says, show me your daily actions and I'll show you the future you're going to live. We all intuitively know that, but we forget it. And we think, well, we'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it next week. We get this kind of mañana kind of mindset. And the reality is that we're either great or we're not great in the moment. Every time we choose to do the things that we know are driving us where we want to go, we are by own definition great. We don't have to wait till someday in the future when we get recognized for what we've done. We don't have to wait until we hit the big payday when we sell the big property. That's evidence of our greatness. But our greatness doesn't occur when that stuff happens. Our greatness happens in the moment when we do the stuff it takes to be great. And if you've been following the process of the 5 disciplines, that really comes down to when you execute the tactics in your plan. Every time you get one of those tactics done, you got to have a little celebration for yourself.
Right.
You were just great, according to you, because you set this vision for the far distant future. Says, this is the life that I'm capable of. This is the life that creates meaning for me. This is my purpose. And then you back that into a 12-week plan, right? So a 12-week goal representing progress towards that vision, also a great outcome. And then you build all these tactics to execute to get to that goal, right? So that tactic, when it comes due in week 6 on Wednesday, if you get that tactic done, you are great that Wednesday, because that's the stuff that's going to create that future you say you want. That's what greatness in moment is. It's just a realization that we live life moment by moment by moment.
And conscious, right? Back to the consciousness of, not just the celebration of the actual, like you said, the evidence of the work,
right,
but celebrate the real work that goes into it. Right. I think when people are going to be listening to this, they're going to be really jealous that I got this time with you. I think you're really a fabulous guy. And I thank you for your generosity, because you have a great book, but I was really interested in breaking it down for people, because it's very easy to take all of these kind of systems and say, oh, this is just another one like that. I think you and Brian really touched on something here that we fully endorse at the Institute, so much so that we're offering a very sort of private experience with you and Brian for Institute members. So for the members that are listening here, on January 14th and 15th, Brian and Michael are doing a live stream. And as Institute members, you're going to get a super special experience during that. And one of those experiences is time with this guy. I feel really fortunate about that. So again, for Institute members, go to 12weekyear.com/institute. Did I get that right?
Got that right.
Excellent. And for, we got a lot of folks that listen to our podcast that aren't Institute members. And if they'd really like to attend your session, this live stream that is an immersive, really training in how to truly plan and set your vision and do all the things that we talked about. How do they register for that?
Exactly the same thing, except they don't /institute. They just go to 12weekyear.com, and there'll be a sign up link there that
Excellent.
you can click on and learn more about the program and see if you're interested. So
it's a great program. And there's the idea of how do you institutionalize this? Sorry for the play on words, but really, how do you institutionalize this? And you've got software, you've got ways for people to really immerse themselves in this new way of being in this world of real estate, where it's all about business planning and planning this and planning that, but no real teaching about how do you plan. Right. Not hey, go make these calls, but what is this whole thing for? Right.
Yep. It ties the call to why, right? So you're tying your activity to what's important and why you're doing it. And I think that's so simple, and yet most people don't do that all the time. So,
well, we know it. We just don't know how to do it, right? Or we don't do it all the time. That no-do gap that you guys talk about in the book. Well, again, the book is available on Amazon, The 12-Week Year. There's a field guide to it as well. That's kind of a workbook, right?
Mm-hmm. It goes a little bit deeper in the book on some of the techniques, but yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you again for spending this time with us. We really appreciate it. And best of luck to you. Thanks again.
It was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it.
Good. I'm glad. Take care.